And the team that gets me excited, Manchester United, Manchester, Manchester United.
Only the league champions were playing Europe, nobody else. And the year before, United won the league, Chelsea were the champions, and they decided not to go into Europe because they were advised by the Football League didn't want them to do it, so they didn't. And they didn't want United to go in either, did they?
No.
They thought it was a mistake. But Matt Busby thought it was the next step of development.
And he had vision, didn't he? I mean,
yeah.
Looking back, you think how ridiculous that was.
To not do it.
Not do it, yeah.
Yeah, I know, crazy. And so Matt, obviously, even after everything that happened, he still doesn't regret making that decision. He still thinks that it was the right decision to do for English football and United. And it was just a tragic accident, wasn't it? So they've got to travel to this Eastern European country they've never been before. They don't know what they're going to face. And there's some funny stories that some of the players would take, like they'd have the suitcase, but most of the suitcase would be full of food. And what they said, and apparently one of the players took a mini stove with them as well, because they didn't think that people heated up food in some of these Eastern Bloc countries. So it was, so that's quite funny, really, isn't it? That
it's a different time, isn't it?
Yeah, massive, isn't it? Massive.
Different time.
Not too far after, the Second World War as well, and you just don't know what you're going to see. But they chartered a private plane because they were told, no uncertain terms by the FA, you have to be back in the country 24 hours before your Saturday 3 o'clock home game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. If you're not, then you will be deducted points and you'll be fined. So there was pressure to get back. Because it was back in late 50s, you couldn't fly direct from England to Yugoslavia. You had to go via somewhere else to refuel. So they went to Munich to refuel, then to Yugoslavia, and then obviously back the other way. So they play the game in Belgrade. They go 3-0 up before half time. Incredible. I think Bobby gets a couple, and they're playing superb. You look at the conditions as well on the footage, and it's like frozen pitch, isn't it? When you look at it,
terrible.
So, but then I think they had a dodgy penalty. Then I think Red Star, and then they came back into it and finished 3-3. So I think United were hanging on at the end, but they managed to do it. And I've got there's a few pictures that I'll put up as well of like the program from that game as well, and there's a copy of the ticket. And after the game, they had a banquet as well. That's what they used to do, isn't it? They had banquets after some of these games with the players, and they all got together. So they had a banquet at the Majestic Hotel, I think it was. And there's a copy, and I think there's a framed copy of the original one in the Hotel Majestic in Belgrade. So it's the menu, and the players have signed it. And I think that's in the reception area now at the Majestic, which is still there in Belgrade. So so I'll put a picture up of a copy of that. And then you've got the iconic photograph, the last lineup on that day. The lads coming out and lining up. So you've got that photograph on your wall, haven't you?
Yeah.
For the last lineup. It's what a team. If you look from the left to right, you've got Big Duncan and Eddie Coleman, Mark Jones, Kenny Morgans, Sir Bobby, Dennis Violet, Tommy Taylor, Bill Foulkes, Harry Gregg, Albert Scanlon, and then the captain, Roger Byrne, at the end there. So what a team. What a team. And then the other players who travelled with them, because they didn't have subs then, did they?
No.
They had Ray Wood was the reserve keeper. He was a great keeper, weren't he? Jeff Bent was the reserve left back. And he only went last minute because the previous game was United played Arsenal in the league on the Saturday at Highbury, beat them 5-4, and Roger Byrne had a slight knock in that game. So that's why Jeff Bent went.
Right.
That's the only reason why he went. It was the last.
And you got that program as well.
Yeah, I'll put that up as well. Yeah, I got that program for the Arsenal game. Yeah, there's a few pictures there as well of the players during that game. It was supposed to, they beat them 5-4, which is, you don't get them games anymore, do you? 5-4, especially in one of the best games seen at Highbury. The last time the Busby Bay played in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Another story as well. Tommy Taylor made friends with one of the players for Belgrade, and they'd arranged to spend the summer holiday together because he had a place. Obviously, he would have had a beautiful play. This guy on some wherever it was, and Tommy Taylor was going to travel and stay at this guy's house. You know, just talking about normal stuff, wouldn't it? Normal stuff for this, and then they've got to travel back. Obviously, February weather's bad. Flying to Munich, and it's so much snow. It's unreal. And I think we all know. Obviously, we know what happened. You know, it was the third takeoff, and they just couldn't get enough thrust to get off the ground because of the slush. That's what it was. It was slush on the runway, and then at the time they thought it was the wings, wasn't it? The wings were the ice on the wings, and they tried to blame the captain, didn't they? For years and years, the captain got the blame, and it was nothing to do with the captain. Captain Thame, and it wasn't his fault. It was slush on the runway. They just couldn't get enough power. But because they had so much pressure to get back, that's why they did it, and they tried it. But they shouldn't have left the terminal after the second takeoff. And I think the players, the survivors, talk about it, and they say we shouldn't have took off. It said it only needed one of us to say I'm not going, and we wouldn't have gone because they were scared.
Yeah,
they were scared.
I thought everyone on the aeroplane was afraid. There's no doubt about it. Everyone on the aeroplane was afraid at that time, and no one was courageous enough. I don't know what you suppose you call it, moral courage, to stand up and say I'm not going. And I feel myself, if anyone had stood up and said I'm not going, I feel no one would have gone.
But some of them changed places as well for that third takeoff. They moved places.
Life's all about luck.
Yeah.
Or in this case, for a lot of them, it was bad luck.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you see.
But you never know. I've always told you, you never know what's around the corner.
No.
You never know.
That's right. And some of these guys, you know, it's yeah, because I think a lot of them who sat at the back of the plane, they just didn't survive, and they moved there because they thought it was safer. Yeah. And so Bobby could have gone, because I think Tommy Taylor asked him, or Duncan asked him, come and sit at the back, and he didn't. He said, I want to stay where I am.
Why did I survive when and the others didn't? Fate, just luck. Just luck, maybe. That I actually sat with my seat facing backwards instead of forwards.
And Harry Gregg, you know, the hero, going back into a burning plane. You know, you see the images on the telly, you know, of the broken fuselage, and he's gone back in a few times to save people. You know, there was other people on the plane. Mrs. Lukage, he saved Mrs. Lukage, and she was pregnant, and he went in and saved her baby as well. And there's different films and that about him meeting them later on, and you could see the effect it has on Harry Gregg. Every time.
Bobby didn't want to play football again, did he?
No, Bobby didn't know. But Harry Gregg, you could see he was a tough man, wasn't he? Tough Irish man, wasn't he? Really tough guy, Harry Gregg, good goalkeeper. And he didn't want to talk, and he wasn't a hero in his eyes. He said, I'm not a hero, I just did what I thought was right. But he could see that when he went to see these families and stuff, he just couldn't handle it. It just got to him, and it brought it all back for him.
Well, you put yourself in this position, how difficult.
I had no sense of fear, and I didn't think that I had time to be afraid after what happened, because I heard a child cry inside what was left of the aircraft, and I think this brought me to my senses. And I went looking for it.
One of the documentaries, the old airport in Munich, the part of the terminal building was still there. I think it's all been developed now, some of this bit there. But the building was still there, and he went into this building. And I think he said, "You're going to have to stop filming now." He just needed some time, because he just took him back to that time in this old building, real big. And that would have been the last time they were together. You know, it's and there's a fantastic memorial in Munich at the point where the plane crashed.
Yeah, I've seen
There's
it.
a fantastic bit there, and part of the runway is just fields. They haven't done anything with it. It's maintained there by the Germans. Bayern Munich have a lot to do with it as well, which is wonderful, isn't it? So, but yeah, you said about Sir Bobby, he didn't want to carry on, did he? So
He didn't know, but he was persuaded to, and he played in that game against the Albion. First going back, did he play in that?
no, he didn't play. He was there, but he didn't play.
Didn't play. No.
Yeah, it was the FA Cup tie against Sheffield Wednesday, Old Trafford, and it was within 2 weeks of the disaster. When it probably 10 days, I can't remember exactly 10 days was it. So, but I've actually got. So I'll put the program up. So yeah, that was on the 19th of February. FA Cup, the FA Cup tie. You'll see from the programme I'll stick up there now to message from the chairman. United will go on, which is what they did. Jimmy Murphy got them all together, didn't he? How he did it, because they were all his babies, weren't they? And if you don't know, the reason why Jimmy Murphy wasn't on the trip is he was manager of Wales, and they had a game in Cardiff, so he was away with Wales.
Yeah, but how do you find the strength to carry on?
I don't know how he did it.
No,
I don't know how he did it. It's you know, all those lads that he spent all that time with and developed. You know, he loved them boys. You know, just gone, just like that. But he had it in him, tough.
absolutely.
Jimmy Murphy, he knew they had to carry on. So else the club would die. The club would die along with the lads. It would have finished, and it was close to finishing, I think, because they didn't have any money. So, but he did it. He carried on. Jimmy Murphy. You know, what a man. You know, another one, massive part of what Man United was and is and will be, because you still remember what Jimmy Murphy did. And there's a fantastic statue now, which is long overdue, but it's a fantastic statue at the back of the Stretford end. That's there to commemorate what he did.
Yeah.
And two rights. Took a while for it to happen, but it's there now. And the reason why they put it there is because that's where they used to train, at the back of the Stretford end. It was like a concrete rough ground, and they used to play. And Jimmy Murphy used to get stuck in with them to toughen them up. Used to kick them and stuff. So imagine it. Jimmy Murphy had to get a team. He said, "Right, we've got this game. We haven't got any players. We've only got young lads. I don't know who's fit from the team, who can play, and I've got to pick this team." He had so Bill Foulkes and Harry Gregg. How they managed to do it 2 weeks after the disaster, they played in that game. Bill Foulkes was captain. There's a photograph of him coming out the tunnel, and you could see he just didn't want to be there. And after the game as well, him and Harry Gregg. You can't imagine it, can you?
No.
You can't imagine it. So, but what? So when they printed the program, they left the team blank. You know, it's iconic program, isn't it, that one? They left it blank.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in memory of the team and that, because they just did not know what the team was. They didn't know, and they just asked people to write the team in when it was announced, because he didn't know. You know, so So they had a few training sessions with the young lads, and he put a team together. And apparently they could buy players who had already played in the FA Cup as well. They bent the rules for United. So they signed Ernie Taylor from Blackpool, who was an England international when he was a forward. More experienced player that they wanted him. And they bought a player from the Villa as well. I think it was centre-half or midfielder, Stan Crowther. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Stan Crowther.
Albert Quicksall.
That he actually played in the game against United. He played for Sheffield when they bought him the next season.
That's right, yeah.
He was part of the rebuild, yeah. So they played his team and they beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-0. It's just, the lads were cheering him on, weren't they? The atmosphere of that game, the passion, that's what got the boys through. I think Shea Brennan got 2, and Alex Dawson was a striker. He got the other one.
A patched-up Manchester United, made up of untried youngsters and emergency signings, faced Sheffield Wednesday in the 5th round of the FA Cup on a night of highly charged emotion at Old Trafford. Murphy was among 60,000 people inside the ground who saw reserve fullback Shea Brennan, playing at outside left, score the first 2 goals.
Bobby Charlton, injured in the crash, and Mr. Murphy, understudy to Matt Busby, now saw the ball curl into Wednesday's goal from a corner by Brennan.
When the ball went in the net, the sound was just deafening, really. And we were on our way.
17-year-old Mark Pearson has the ball. Alec Dawson's ready to receive, and there's number 3. Old Trafford's seen so many great days, but for brilliant triumph over disaster, surely none will ever be as great as this.
But they were all young lads, just thrown in. Some of them hadn't played for the first team before. Some had played a few games. Ian Greaves, remember Ian Greaves, don't you? We saw him at the Albion once, didn't we? Ronnie Cope as well, he was another one. Colin Webster. But so Bobby Charlton actually went to the game to watch it, and he sat next to Jimmy Murphy.
Did he? I didn't know.
Yeah, he actually went to that game. So there's a picture of him in the stand. He's there. And in interviews that I've seen of him, he said, he's there, and he said, "What am I doing here? There's nothing wrong with me. I should be out there." And that's when he told Jimmy Murphy, he said, "I'll be back." Because he was recovering up with his mum in Ashington. He said, "I'll be back Monday." And then he was 19, 20? And he was like the senior member of the team.
Yeah.
And it was on his shoulders, wasn't it, really? Him and Dennis Violet. Because a lot of them players couldn't carry on, could they?
No.
Kenny Morgan's, Albert Scanlon hardly played, didn't really have much of a career. I had a little bit, but not much. They just couldn't do it. Johnny Berry, Jackie Blanchflower never played again. Injuries, just too much. I should have got the Munich tunnel now at Old Trafford, which is amazing, They did that after the 50-year anniversary. So that's wonderful. You walk all the way down it, and they've got different bits commemorating and celebrating the Busby Babes. And there's a flame, that's an eternal flame that's lit, that was lit by Roger Byrne's son, who was Roger Byrne as well, Roger Byrne Jr. And Roger never saw him because his wife was pregnant when he went. So it was quite apt that he actually lit that candle, Roger Byrne Jr. So, yeah. But you just can't get your head around it, can you? You cannot get your head around it. I tried to understand it when I was younger. I tried to understand it. I actually bought a book from the souvenir shop, and it was 25 years after Munich. So that would have been, 83? 25 years after Munich. And that's how I got to know about Munich, reading that book. And obviously asking you questions as well. And that's how I got to know about it and understand it a bit more. So, I recommend to any United fan to, do some research and read about it. I'll put a few books up there that are interesting about it as well, and just there's lots to learn and to understand about it all. So because United have all the red flag, get the red flag flying on it. So when do you? So the time, obviously I wasn't alive when it happened. So like a JFK moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You remember where you were. You know, people do that, you know, when Diana died and what have you. So, obviously, you was only 9, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I knew where I was. I was just down the road. We had a pond just down the road, and I remember fixing something on my bicycle. It sounds very posh, on my bike. And a kid I knew, I can't remember who he is now, he rode past and he shouted out, "Have you heard about your team, Dave?" I said, "No." I won't tell you what he said, but I didn't believe him when obviously I saw it on the news, and it's always difficult to believe, isn't it? When something.
I have read a book that a guy, I'll stick it up there. I think his surname was Hall. I can't remember his first name now. It's called I think it's Manchester's Finest. I think the title of the book is, and it's all about the impact it had on him as a kid growing up in Manchester at the time and how it affected Manchester. So it's quite interesting to read it about the impact it had locally, and obviously then you can feel it nationally as well. But he was a young lad in this bubble around Manchester, and he said the effect it had on the city was just unreal. You just couldn't fathom it. And you didn't. There was no news really, was it? It was like radio. There was a bit on the telly, weren't there? But it was only so often in the day, and
Nothing like today.
No, nothing like today. Not 24 hours. So to get information on that, it was really difficult. But I managed to get hold of a newspaper cutting from February the 7th, 1958, from the Daily Mirror. So this is what people would have looked at the next day. So, you know, and it said about some of the players who were injured. It's got like Busby injured, Frank Swift, who's the Man City goalkeeper, who's one of the journalists, killed, Scanlon injured, Charlton injured, Greg Bent injured, Blanchflower injured, Morgan's injured. And then it's got players that were unknown, like Duncan Edwards, fate unknown, Bill Foulkes injured, Mark Jones, fate unknown. A lot of them were fate unknown, like Eddie Coleman, Davy Pegg, seriously injured, Ray Wood and Johnny Berry. Fate unknown for a lot of them. So, you know, it just, I don't know. You read that. So if you're a family and you read that in the paper, what would you do?
Yeah. How did you cope with
8
that?
players died. Mark Jones, Roger Byrne, Jeff Bent, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg, Tommy Taylor, Liam Billy Whelan, and later in hospital, the great Duncan Edwards. Also dead, trainer Tom Curry, coach Bert Wally, secretary Walter Crickmer. 8 journalists, 2 other passengers, and 2 crew members. Munich claimed 23 lives.
Well, I think the way I'm gonna finish this one is I'm just gonna read out a couple of little statements that certain people had made who survived the disaster in it. So Bill Foulkes said, he said he asked the nurse which hospital we should go next to see the other lads. She looked puzzled and said there were no others. The only survivors were in the hospital in which we were standing. He said that's when the whole thing hit me. I just wanted to go home. All his lads, his pals. Jimmy Murphy. The day after the crash, I went out to Munich with the relatives of the survivors. Matt was in an oxygen tent, and as I bent close, he whispered, "Keep the flag flying, Jimmy." I had to get a team together again. I had to find players from somewhere. So that's what drove Jimmy Murphy then, wasn't it? That. Just the last one, Ian Greaves, who played in that game against Sheffield Wednesday, said when we beat Sheffield Wednesday, it was an electrifying night, but there was no cheering going on in the dressing room afterwards. We were all sad. I felt in a way that I shouldn't have been there, that I was stepping into someone else's shoes. But Jimmy Murphy did a wonderful job. And yeah, so that sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah. I know how we're going to finish this. I'm going to put up a video. There was a docu-film done about United, the Munich disaster, and the ending was the fellow who played Jimmy Murphy. Can't remember the actor's name, but he was Doctor Who. He's in the tunnel before the '58 Cup final. So he's there in the tunnel, and he's looking down at all the players, all the new team. He's looking there, and then he's like thinking, and then he looks back again, and he can see the lads. Rest in peace.
In memory's eyes, the Busby babes are all immortal. The Red Devil spirit lives, it never died.